Arjun Malhotra thought he'd found love in Amelia Rutherford's arms, but what he really found was a trap spun from lies, lust, and murder that would turn Sydney's glittering skyline into his personal hell. The Crime Scene presents a new page of crime, a new mystery, a new shock case. Arjun Malhotra stepped off the plane at Sydney Kingsford Smith Airport with nothing but a dream, a laptop, and the kind of hunger that couldn't be taught. At 29, he'd left behind the chaos of Mumbai for a shiny new start, one filled with skyscrapers, beach sunsets, and the promise of a fat paycheck. His new job at a top-tier software company in downtown Sydney was supposed to be his golden ticket. He had worked like a machine for it, coding through endless nights in his cramped apartment back home. Now, he was ready to live the life he'd only seen on screens. The city hit him hard. The smell of espresso, the hum of traffic, the ocean breeze cutting through the urban sprawl. He blended in fast, rocking tailored shirts, designer watches bought on discount, and an easy smile that made people trust him. His co-workers liked him. His boss liked his results. Arjun was the guy who turned problems into solutions, who stayed late and delivered early. Still, beneath that calm, calculated surface, there was a restless pulse. Sydney was gorgeous, but it was also lonely. He spent nights scrolling through dating apps, drinking cheap wine, and staring at the ceiling wondering if success meant anything without someone to share it with. His weekends were a mix of long coastal runs and rooftop bar nights that blurred together. He had no idea that fate was already twisting the knife behind the curtain. His name had popped up in the right inbox, at the right time, for a private project involving a powerful client. It was the kind of opportunity that could boost his career or destroy it completely. He thought he was stepping into the next chapter of his success story. Instead, he was walking straight into a nightmare that would make headlines across the world. The night of the charity gala sparkled with wealth, power, and champagne bubbles that never seemed to stop flowing. Arjun stood near the bar, his tie slightly loosened, pretending to fit in among Sydney's elite. The event was packed with business moguls, influencers, and politicians, people whose watches cost more than his yearly rent. He wasn't supposed to be there, not really. His boss had offered him the ticket as a reward for closing a tough deal, and Arjun figured it couldn't hurt to network. But when she walked in, everything around him faded into background noise. Amelia Rutherford. Her name slipped through the crowd like a secret. She wore a white gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, her hair falling perfectly over her bare shoulders. Everyone noticed her, but she noticed no one, until her gaze met his. It was a moment so brief yet electric that it froze him in place. Arjun had seen beautiful women before, but Amelia was something else entirely. She carried herself like a woman who had the world's attention, yet wanted none of it. He later learned who she was, the wife of Charles Rutherford, a billionaire real estate mogul with a reputation as charming in public as he was cold behind closed doors. Charles was older, commanding, and known for crushing his competitors without mercy. The whispers said his marriage was just another business deal, a picture-perfect illusion for social events. Arjun should have left it at that, admire from afar and move on. But Amelia's allure had a gravitational pull. Throughout the night, he caught glimpses of her across the ballroom. Her laughter, her poise, her loneliness that somehow cut through the glamour. That single evening planted a seed of curiosity in Arjun's mind, one that would soon grow into obsession. He didn't know it yet, but Amelia Rutherford would become the most dangerous code he'd ever try to crack. A few weeks after the gala, Arjun got an unexpected email from Amelia Rutherford herself. The subject line was casual, tech help needed, but seeing her name pop up on his screen made his heart skip. She claimed she was having issues syncing her company laptop with a cloud system, something simple for him to fix. He agreed to meet her at a cafe near Darling Harbor, trying to convince himself it was just professional courtesy. When she arrived, dressed down in jeans and a cashmere sweater, she looked nothing like the untouchable woman from the gala. She was relaxed, even vulnerable, and that disarmed him instantly. That single meeting turned into several. Coffee meetups shifted to late-night dinners, and soon, boundaries blurred. Their conversations spilled beyond tech talk, into books, travel, music, and secrets. Arjun found himself drawn into her orbit like a moth to a flame. Amelia spoke about her husband's absence, his temper, and the emptiness that wealth couldn't fill. She wasn't the trophy wife everyone imagined. She was a woman trapped in a golden cage. And Arjun, foolishly romantic, believed he could set her free. Their affair unfolded in secret corners of the city, hotel rooms under fake names, long drives along the coast, and whispered promises that felt too good to be true. For the first time in years, Arjun felt alive. Every text from her was a rush, every touch a rebellion. But underneath the thrill, there was always a shadow. Amelia's phone was always on silent. She never stayed the whole night. Sometimes, she'd flinch at unknown numbers calling her. Arjun ignored the warning signs, convinced love could rewrite fate. He told himself she was scared of being found out. What he didn't know was that the affair wasn't a secret. It was a setup, and every stolen kiss was being recorded by someone who was already pulling the strings. Charles Rutherford wasn't the kind of man you could fool twice. Behind the charm and tailored suits, he was a predator who built his empire on control, over people, over money, and especially over his wife. When Amelia started disappearing for yoga retreats and charity planning meetings, Charles didn't confront her. He hired people, private investigators, digital forensics experts, and even a former cop now working as his personal security head. Within weeks, he had everything: photos, timestamps, license plates. Arjun Malhotra's name was now etched into the crosshairs of a man who never lost. Arjun noticed the change slowly. The same silver sedan parked near his apartment 2 nights in a row. A figure in a black hoodie lingering outside his office building. His phone battery draining faster than usual, like someone was tracking it. He tried brushing it off, thinking maybe he was overreacting. But paranoia has a way of seeping in quietly. He stopped sharing his location with friends. He started taking different routes home. He even changed his number, but the messages kept coming, short, chilling, and anonymous. Asterisk, you think she loves you? Asterisk, asterisk, you'll regret this. Asterisk. Amelia told him Charles had done this before with another man who'd gotten too close, and that story haunted him. The guy had vanished after a mysterious car crash near the Blue Mountains. The police called it an accident. Charles called it bad luck. Arjun started realizing that loving Amelia meant stepping into a war he didn't sign up for. One night, as he drove home from work, his rearview mirror caught a flash of headlights that didn't belong. The car followed him for miles, backing off every time he changed lanes. His chest tightened, sweat forming on his palms. That's when it hit him. This wasn't jealousy anymore. It was surveillance. And someone out there wanted him to know he was being hunted. When Amelia told Arjun about the villa outside Sydney, it sounded like the perfect escape. Hidden deep in the bushlands, surrounded by tall gum trees and silence, it was supposedly a place her husband never visited. She called it her sanctuary, a property she had before marrying Charles. To Arjun, it felt like freedom, a place where they could finally be together without glances, whispers, or fear. The moment he stepped through the wrought iron gates, he felt like he was entering another world. The mansion stood tall and beautiful, with glass walls that caught the sunlight, yet something about it felt staged. Too perfect, too quiet. Inside, the air smelled of red wine and fresh linen. Expensive art lined the walls, but some of the frames hung slightly crooked, as if someone had been there recently. Amelia poured them both a drink, her smile soft but distracted. She told him she was ready to leave Charles for good, that she'd already contacted a lawyer and planned to disappear to Europe once everything was settled. Arjun believed her. He wanted to believe her. For the first time, it felt like they had a real future, one built on love instead of stolen moments. But as the evening unfolded, strange details started to creep in. A faint buzzing sound echoed through the vents, like distant interference. A camera light flickered for a split second near the bookshelf before going dark. When Arjun mentioned it, Amelia brushed it off as an alarm sensor. Still, his gut twisted. He didn't know that hidden microphones were planted behind the walls, recording every breath, every confession, every whispered plan to run away. Someone was watching them, closely. That villa wasn't their safe haven. It was a stage, and Arjun had just walked straight into the spotlight of a game that had already been rigged against him. The message came early one morning while Arjun was still half asleep. His phone buzzed, and when he checked it, his blood ran cold. It was a photo, Amelia, asleep in his arms, clearly taken in the villa's bedroom. The caption underneath read, asterisk, she's mine. Asterisk, his stomach twisted into knots. He jumped out of bed, scanning his apartment like someone was hiding in the shadows. No windows were broken, no locks tampered with, but something felt violated. That image was from a private moment. Someone had been there. Someone had seen everything. When he showed the message to Amelia, she acted calm, too calm. She told him Charles was trying to scare him, that this was nothing new. He just wants to rattle you, she said, brushing her hair aside, her voice trembling slightly. But Arjun saw the fear she tried to mask. The more she pretended it was fine, the clearer it became that things were spiraling out of control. Arjun began noticing more strange things. His emails were being accessed from unknown IPs. His car alarm would go off randomly in the middle of the night. Even his work laptop glitched during meetings, showing brief flashes of static screens. He started keeping a knife under his pillow, double-checking the locks before sleeping. Every noise made him flinch. Amelia insisted Charles was bluffing, that he'd never actually hurt her. But then came the untraceable phone calls, just silence on the other end, breathing heavy enough to make his skin crawl. Arjun's confidence was unraveling. The man who once trusted logic and code now lived by paranoia and instinct. He wanted to walk away, to vanish, but Amelia begged him to stay. She said they were too deep in to stop now, that they just had to endure a little longer. Arjun didn't know it yet, but a little longer was all he had left before everything went to hell. Amelia's sudden silence hit Arjun like a punch to the gut. One night she promised to call after sorting something out, and then, nothing. No messages. No calls. Her phone went straight to voicemail. At first, he told himself she just needed space. But by the second day, panic crept in. He drove to her mansion, a sprawling estate that usually buzzed with staff and luxury cars. Now it was eerily still. The iron gates were locked, the windows shuttered, and the security cameras that once rotated mechanically now hung lifeless. Something was wrong. He waited outside for hours, watching the driveway under a fading sunset. Her car was still parked there, gathering dust. He walked the perimeter, searching for movement, but all he heard were cicadas. The next morning, he tried calling Charles Rutherford's office. The secretary coolly informed him that Mrs. Rutherford had left for Europe on personal matters. That didn't add up. Amelia hated flying, and she never mentioned any trip. Her social media accounts vanished the same day. No photos, no posts, not even a digital trace. It was like she'd been erased. Arjun's worry turned into obsession. He checked flight records, called hospitals, and even hacked into airport logs searching for her name. Nothing. Not a single record. Then came the news article. Real estate mogul's wife takes time away amid marital issues. The piece quoted Charles directly, claiming Amelia needed privacy to heal. The smiling photo of him holding her hand made Arjun's blood boil. He went back to the villa, desperate for answers, but found it stripped bare. No clothes, no furniture, not even the scent of her perfume lingered. Only one thing remained, a red scarf he recognized as hers, caught on the edge of a broken picture frame. That's when he realized the truth. Amelia Rutherford hadn't left. She had vanished, and someone wanted the world to believe she never existed. The knock on Arjun's apartment door came just after dawn, sharp and deliberate. Two detectives stood there, their expressions cold and rehearsed. They flashed badges, pushed past him, and within minutes, his apartment turned into a crime scene. Drawers were pulled open, clothes tossed aside, his laptop and phone seized. Arjun stood frozen, heart pounding, as they read out a search warrant for the suspicious disappearance of Amelia Rutherford. He tried to explain that she was missing, that he'd been the one looking for her, but the look in their eyes told him the script was already written. Hours later, the nightmare deepened. Detectives claimed they'd found bloodstains in the trunk of his car. A red scarf, identified as Amelia's, was discovered under his bed. To them, the story was simple, an affair turned violent. A jealous lover unable to handle rejection. Within hours, Sydney's tabloids exploded with headlines. Asterisk, Indian engineer kills millionaire's wife in jealous rage. Asterisk, his photo, once professional and clean-cut, was plastered beside the words obsessed, unstable, and killer. Arjun's world crumbled overnight. His co-workers ghosted him, his employer suspended him, pending investigation, and even his landlord wanted him gone. He was dragged into interrogation rooms where detectives threw photos across the table, demanding confessions. Every digital trace, texts, emails, search history, had been twisted to fit a story he didn't write. They claimed he'd searched for how to dispose of a body and cleaning blood from fabric. He swore he hadn't, but the data didn't lie, or so they said. Sitting in that gray interrogation room, Arjun finally realized how deep this went. Someone had planted evidence. Someone with money, power, and a motive. He tried to warn them about Charles Rutherford, but no one wanted to listen. To the world, Arjun Malhotra wasn't an innocent man fighting for truth. He was a killer who'd just been caught. Sydney couldn't get enough of the scandal. Every news channel, blog, and gossip site had Arjun Malhotra's face splashed across it. Dark hair, anxious eyes, and the headline, Tech Genius Turned Killer. Overnight, he became the city's newest villain, the immigrant who dared to chase a rich man's wife and paid the price. The media tore him apart piece by piece, his background, his accent, his visa, even his LinkedIn profile. Talk show hosts debated whether he'd planned Amelia's murder or just snapped when she tried to end things. Nobody cared about facts. They wanted drama, and Arjun's story had everything: sex, power, and blood. Meanwhile, Charles Rutherford played the part of the grieving husband flawlessly. Cameras caught him outside the courthouse, dressed in black, eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, voice trembling as he thanked the police for their hard work. He made a generous donation to a domestic violence charity and told reporters he wanted justice for Amelia. The crowd ate it up. He was a billionaire widower seeking closure. Arjun was the homewrecker who destroyed a perfect marriage. Inside his cell, Arjun watched it all unfold on a tiny television bolted to the wall. The more he saw, the clearer it became that he'd been framed to perfection. The police had everything they needed to bury him. Surveillance footage of him entering Amelia's villa, bank records showing unexplained deposits, and GPS data linking him to her mansion the night she disappeared. Each piece of evidence felt like a nail in his coffin. His attorney, a public defender drowning in cases, barely looked up from her notes during meetings. "The best we can do," she said, "is plead guilty and ask for leniency." But Arjun couldn't accept that. He knew he hadn't killed Amelia. Someone else had, and they'd done it so cleanly that even the truth looked like a lie. Weeks passed, and Arjun's case started to fade from the front pages, replaced by new scandals and fresh tragedies. But one morning, something unexpected arrived at the police station. A handwritten letter, postmarked from a rural town outside Sydney. The message was brief, shaky, and unsigned. It claimed Amelia Rutherford was alive, that she'd been taken against her will, and that her husband was behind it all. The writer said they'd seen Amelia drugged and loaded into a black van the night she disappeared. The letter's author was a woman named Lila, one of the housemaids who had quietly vanished after Amelia's disappearance. The detectives dismissed it as a hoax, but one officer quietly sent a copy to Arjun's lawyer. When Arjun read it, hope flickered in his chest for the first time in months. Maybe he wasn't crazy. Maybe Amelia really was alive. He begged his lawyer to push for an investigation, but the system didn't care about anonymous letters. Still, word about it spread inside the prison, and inmates whispered about the billionaire's setup. Guards started treating him differently, less like a murderer, more like a curiosity. A week later, the maid who wrote the letter was gone. She'd been living in a small rented unit, but neighbors reported seeing two men in suits visit her before she vanished. No trace, no report, no follow-up. The police quietly shelved the tip, labeling it unverified. Arjun felt the hope drained from him again. The trial date was set, and the prosecution built their story with precision. Every headline, every detail painted him as a man driven by obsession. Amelia was now the victim, Charles the devastated husband, and Arjun, the perfect monster. He realized then that justice wasn't blind, it was bought. And the man who bought it had more power than Arjun could ever imagine. Locked behind bars, Arjun refused to give up. He had no access to lawyers who cared and no one left on the outside who believed him, but he still had his mind and his skills. Using a smuggled tablet passed between inmates, he began digging. The prison's Wi-Fi was limited, but Arjun knew how to slip through firewalls like a ghost. He started with public databases, business records, and leaked offshore documents. What began as a desperate search for Amelia turned into something darker, an entire web of shell companies linked to Rutherford Enterprises. He traced payments to accounts in Singapore, the Cayman Islands, and Dubai, all hidden under aliases. One of those names made his blood run cold. Amelia Rutherford, beneficiary. Either she was alive and laundering money, or Charles was using her identity to keep his empire untouchable. Every click uncovered more rot. Properties bought under fake firms, consulting fees that matched illegal shipments, and payments to security contractors who didn't exist. One night, while scrolling through another set of encrypted files, Arjun stumbled onto something that confirmed his worst fear. Charles wasn't just a businessman. He was a trafficker, dealing in people and secrets. Amelia had mentioned once that she'd seen things she wasn't supposed to. Now he knew what she meant. Maybe she hadn't vanished because she wanted to. Maybe she tried to expose him. Arjun tried sending his findings to his lawyer, but the message never got through. The prison network suddenly blocked his access, and the tablet was confiscated during a surprise cell inspection the next day. A warning. Someone on the inside was watching too. Still, Arjun kept the memory of what he'd seen burned into his mind. He didn't have proof anymore, but he had the truth. And if he ever got out, Charles Rutherford wouldn't just lose his empire, he'd lose his mask. Just days before Arjun's sentencing, the city woke up to breaking news that sent shockwaves across Sydney. A luxury yacht had exploded off the harbor in the middle of the night. Flames lit up the water like a funeral pyre, and the next morning, investigators pulled a woman's body from the wreckage. The authorities claimed it was Amelia Rutherford. Her dental records matched. Her jewelry was recognized by Charles himself. The case was suddenly solved. The media devoured the story. Missing millionaire's wife confirmed dead. Engineer faces life sentence. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, and Charles returned to the spotlight, looking solemn and grief-stricken. He gave a statement to the press about forgiveness and closure, painting himself as the victim once more. The sympathy poured in, and public opinion sealed Arjun's fate before the judge ever spoke a word. But behind bars, Arjun couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The timeline didn't make sense. The autopsy results, leaked online, revealed Amelia had been dead for months, long before the yacht explosion. That meant someone had kept her body hidden, then staged the blast to close the case permanently. It wasn't grief that fueled Charles's actions, it was cleanup. Arjun's appeal was crushed under the weight of new evidence. His lawyer stopped returning calls, and guards started treating him differently, as if the word guilty was tattooed across his forehead. Nights became unbearable. He replayed every memory of Amelia, every warning she'd ever whispered. Was she ever truly his? Or had he just been another pawn in her husband's game? The day his sentence was handed down, Arjun didn't cry. He just stared at the courtroom clock, counting seconds, realizing that the system wasn't broken, it was built this way. And somewhere out there, a man with blood on his hands was still untouchable, watching his empire stand tall over Amelia's ashes. 2 years crawled by inside those cold gray walls, each day bleeding into the next. Arjun's name was forgotten by the world, buried under new scandals and crime stories. But outside, cracks were beginning to show in Charles Rutherford's empire. A former accountant at Rutherford Enterprises leaked documents to a journalist, hundreds of pages detailing money laundering, offshore fraud, and bribes paid to government officials. Overnight, the billionaire's perfect image began to rot. The news exploded across Australia. Charles called it a smear campaign, but the evidence was undeniable. His bank accounts were frozen, his assets seized, and investigators raided his offices. For the first time, the predator looked cornered. Inside his prison cell, Arjun saw the headlines and felt a spark of bitter satisfaction. Justice had finally started to turn, even if it was too late for him. His lawyer, suddenly interested again, filed for an appeal, hoping to link Charles's criminal activities to Amelia's disappearance. The media started whispering that maybe, just maybe, Arjun Malhotra wasn't the monster they'd made him out to be. But redemption doesn't come easy in a world that thrives on blood and scandal. One stormy night, guards found Arjun unresponsive in his cell, a bedsheet tied around his neck. The report said suicide. No note. No goodbye. The warden claimed he'd been depressed, but inmates whispered that Arjun had been fine the day before. Quiet. Yes, but determined. Some said he'd told someone he had proof that would expose everything. That proof was never found. Charles Rutherford was arrested 6 months later, charged with corporate crimes, but never linked to Amelia's death. He walked free on bail, his smile just as polished as ever. Arjun's name was cleared too late, written in small print on the back pages of newspapers that nobody read. The truth had won, but only after the one man who fought for it was gone. Months after Arjun's death, the world moved on. News outlets stopped mentioning his name. Social media forgot his story, and the city of Sydney returned to its glittering routine of business deals and beach parties. But the truth has a strange way of resurfacing, quietly, unexpectedly, and always when no one's ready for it. It started with a single photograph posted on a travel blog by an American tourist in Bali. The image showed a crowded cafe, nothing unusual, until someone zoomed in on the background. There she was, a woman with the same almond eyes, the same delicate tattoo on her wrist that Amelia Rutherford was known for. The resemblance was uncanny. Within hours, the image went viral. Forums lit up with conspiracy theories. Was Amelia alive? Had she staged everything? The affair, the disappearance, the fake death, to escape her husband's control? Or had she and Charles both played Arjun like a pawn in a twisted game of power and survival? Authorities dismissed the claims, calling it internet nonsense, but the mystery refused to die. A few weeks later, the journalist who'd exposed Charles's fraud received an anonymous email. Attached was a video, grainy, time-stamped, filmed somewhere tropical. In it, a woman who looked exactly like Amelia stepped onto a yacht, laughing, her voice faint but familiar. The footage ended abruptly, with no clues about where it came from. Charles Rutherford vanished soon after the video surfaced. His properties were sold off, his accounts emptied, and no one saw him again. Some said he fled the country. Others believed Amelia came back to finish what she started. No one knows what really happened, whether Amelia lived, whether Charles died, or whether both of them still walk free under new names. All that's left are rumors and the haunting truth that love, lies, and greed can bury more than just bodies. They can bury justice itself.